And there it is. Good evening. Thank you so much for coming this evening. This is the inaugural Indivisible Action Southeast North Carolina's Candidate Forum. And what you're likely to witness tonight is going to be very different in purpose and in structure than probably any candidate forum that you've witnessed before. My name is Rachel Lewis-Hilburn, by the way, and one of the really exciting elements of this candidate forum that we have set for you tonight is a problem-solving discussion. But this is how the evening is going to go. I'm going to briefly introduce the candidates joining us, and we still are expecting Clifford Barnett, who, as I understand it, is burning up the road and probably about 3 minutes away. So if he comes rushing in here, we'll welcome him up front. Then we will hear from each candidate very briefly about why they want this job or why they want this job again. They'll have a minute to answer that question. And then we get into the good part with our professional moderator, Dr. Cynthia Cohen. And she'll tell you more about this problem-solving discussion, which will involve a series of hypothetical but very plausible scenarios. And she'll get into some of the rules for that, and those will be extended discussions, about 15 minutes each. Finally, the candidates will answer a brief concluding question, and then after that, you're all invited to decamp with us to the back room for a conversation and refreshment. So first, to understand a little bit more about how this came to be, I'd like to welcome the founder and first organizer of Indivisible Action Southeast North Carolina, Sam Pierce. Welcome, Sam.
Rachel, thanks so much. Wonderful to see everybody here. This is a big night, and we're excited to have this opportunity to watch our leaders and perhaps future mayor and candidates or council members, how they'll perform. We got here because we as a group wanted to put something in front of candidates and watch or enjoy how they work together to solve problems. To do that, we got together and we figured out what are the things that we'd like to talk about. We came up with a questionnaire that we sent out to all the candidates that they have filled out and sent back in. The results of that questionnaire is on the card that you were given when you came in. There's a QR code. And I encourage you to read those because there's a lot of good information about where these folks stand on the issues. Again, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Also, special thanks for Dan and Alex with Django's to have us in this wonderful spot. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Cindy. Oh, back to Rachel.
We're saving the best, so, yeah. So we're gonna meet our candidates briefly, and I'm gonna do this in the order in which they're sitting, although this is a very engaged and self-educated crowd, so you probably could do your own introductions of them at this point. But in the far seat over here, of course, we have Bill Saffo, the current mayor of Wilmington. After winning 9 consecutive elections for the mayoral seat. He was appointed in 2006. He is the longest serving mayor in Wilmington history with 19 years under his belt. Next to Bill Saffo, we have Cassidy Santaguida. She is now a software product manager after working as a software engineer. She's a former teacher and she's a parent. While she has not yet held elected office, she ran for a seat on the New Hanover County Commission last year. Next, we have Billy Craig. He is a first-time political candidate running for the mayoral seat. He had a career in law enforcement, and later he worked as a private investigator, a real estate broker, and for the last more than dozen or so years, he's worked as an adjunct professor at Cape Fear Community College. And of course, Johnathan Barfield is next. He won election to New Hanover County's Board of Commissioners for 4 terms. Over that 16-year period, he served as both chair and vice chair of the board. He works as a realtor, and he's challenging incumbent Mayor Bill Saffo for the mayor's seat. Those are the candidates. Clifford Barnett has not arrived yet, but when he gets here, we'll welcome him into the discussion. So we're gonna start now. No, we're not. I do need to mention who is not joining us this evening. J.C. Lyle is the Senior Regional Director for Wesley Community Development, which is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. While she couldn't be here tonight, she did send answers to those questions that Sam Pierce was talking about. So you can find those candidate answers by scanning the QR code in your materials. Also not with us tonight, Chikima, Clinton Quintana, Richard Collier, Luke Waddell all declined, citing scheduling conflicts, and Kelly Roberts dropped out just a few moments ago. Now, first question. All the candidates will have a chance to tell us why they want this job, and actually, since there's only one incumbent, why you, Mayor Saffo, want this job again. You will each have 1 minute for your answer, and our friend sitting in the front row over here, John Herman, will be timing you, and he will raise his hand when you have 10 seconds left. When time is up, we'll let you finish your sentence, but not necessarily your thought. All right, we'll start with you, Mayor Saffo.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. I have been your mayor. I have run for many elections. Mayor runs every 2 years. But the one thing I did when I decided to run in 2003 was downtown revitalization was extremely important to me. As somebody that grew up in this community, I always knew how beautiful downtown Wilmington was. We spent a lot of time and effort and a lot of people working together, building consensus to make certain that we created a great downtown, which I believe we have. We've always known that we've had the beaches, and the beaches have been phenomenal. They've always been kind of our go-to places. But our downtown was suffering for many years. Being able to finish the Riverwalk, put in the convention center, finish the amphitheater downtown. Also put in one of the largest trails in our community's history with the Gary Show Cross City Trail, which is now almost 30 miles long. It's been a tremendous honor to do and to work with other people, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassidy Santaguida.
Good evening. I'm running for Wilmington City Council because I want to be part of making good things happen for all of us in our city. After I finished college, I was a public high school teacher, and then I transitioned to a career in software technology. I wrote code for many years, and then I managed a workforce development program where I helped hundreds of people transition to a career in software development. And then I moved to Wilmington in 2016 to take a job at a young tech startup called Encino. I was brought here to help grow and scale the software engineering team. When I started, we had a couple dozen software engineers on staff, and when I left the company in 2022, we had hundreds of engineers across 5 global offices, and we've had a very successful tech IPO. So why is an introverted software nerd running for office? I'm raising my 10-year-old daughter, Lyra, here, and it's really important to me that I take all of my leadership experiences and my background and I apply that to the city that she's growing up in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Billy Craig.
Good evening. I'm a retired Wilmington police officer. My last 15 years, I spent working with the FBI, working counterterrorism, foreign counterintelligence, public corruption. Things are a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks. I'm doing this because I'm born and raised here. I believe there's a lot of things that have been done that are not paying attention to what you, the citizens, need. unfortunately, most of my career I worked violent crimes, so I've, talked to people at their worst moments and things like that. I really I just want to continue to work for the citizens. This town means everything to me, this city, not just downtown, but everyone. I don't care where you live, what you look like, how you identify, or anything like that, but that's why I'm running, because I want to be mayor.
Thank you. Johnathan Barfield.
I'm Johnathan Barfield Jr. My wife and I, Laura, just celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary last week. We raised 4 daughters here. I've got 2 awesome grandsons here. Serving on the county commission for 16 years, serving the most powerful governing bodies at local levels, give me the ability to be a part of the big picture of our community, recognizing that counties serve in a greater capacity than the cities do, providing a greater level of service to our community. I represent the citizens of Wilmington for those 16 years. When I think about downtown, my fingerprint is all over downtown. From the time that we gutted out and refurbished 320 Chestnut Street, tearing down the Juvenile Justice Building and putting a new one there, my name is on that building. The building of the Wilson Center, where I was chairman of the board, my name's on that building as well, as the county funded the building of that. The building of Union Station, which the county funded through your bond dollars, being a part of that as well. And I think the greatest thing that we've done is the building of Project Grace that will have ribbon cutting in a week or so, recognizing how beautiful that's going to be for downtown Wilmington. And they're looking at the acquisition of the Bank of America building for Cape Community College, something like that the county commission is doing as well. But again, having grown up here, watched my father serve as county commissioner, I'm committed to our community and looking forward to serving.
Thank you, sir. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Cynthia Cohen, and I'm going to read this because it's complicated. This is really a privilege for us. Dr. Cynthia Cohen is an expert in peace building and conflict transformation. She retired from a program called Peace Building in the Arts at Brandeis University, although she still works to strengthen the arts, culture, and conflict transformation as an Impact Senior Fellow and as an independent scholar and practitioner. She is also the arts and culture organizer for the Horizons Project. As a member of the steering committee of Indivisible Action Southeast North Carolina, she is going to lead these problem-solving discussions. Please welcome Cindy.
Check and see, is Reverend Barnett here? Great.
He's here. He's here. He's here. Somebody do something about that traffic. I'm sorry. Hey.
Sure, yes. Welcome, Reverend Barnett.
Thank you, man. I apologize for being late.
That's okay. Briefly, he is pastor of, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we haven't had a chance to converse. Pastor of Warner AME Zion Church, the current mayor pro tem, first elected to city council in 2017. And if he wins re-election this year, he begins his 3rd term.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. 3rd. Yes. And you will have a minute, sir, to answer the question about why you want this job and why these people should want you in this job.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I do apologize for running late. For some strange reason, I thought we started at 6:30. I want this job because I'm a servant. I've always, all my life, have been one who would like to help people. And I came to Wilmington to pastor a church that I've been pastoring now for the last 16 years. I want this job because I've done an excellent job, I believe, as a city councilman for the last 8 years. We've done a number of great things to make our city a better place to live, and I want to continue to do that, so I wish your support.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Dr. Cynthia Cohen.
So Rachel, thank you so much. And I want to thank the candidates for accepting our invitation to be here and for answering the questions that we sent out to you, voluminous questions. And also I just want to thank all the activists who are here, many of whom have pledged your time or money to support whichever candidate you find compelling. And especially because you're here to participate in the democratic process of selecting our city councilors and mayor. Before beginning our first problem-solving workshop, conversation, I just want to take a moment personally to acknowledge that tonight, in addition to being this forum, is actually Yom Kippur, a significant holiday in the Jewish tradition. And we apologize if the oversight of scheduling this event on Yom Kippur was created challenges for anyone. But I will add that this holiday is a somber time, and one focusing on atonement. So it seems as this year, there's no shortage of things to atone for. So in our individual lives, in our collective life, so perhaps we can make the most of this moment and its reverence for life. So we've chosen an unusual format for the Candidates Forum because we realize that the problems we are facing as a city and as a country can only be addressed successfully through creative thinking, the kind of thinking that emerges through discussion, listening, exploration of differences, and the generation of new ideas. In addition to understanding what the candidates for office think about particular issues, we would like to learn about what you bring to the table in terms of skills required for deliberation. Listening deeply, presenting ideas in clear and concise ways without unnecessary antagonism, disagreeing clearly and productively, and seeking solutions to problems that build on the best of everyone's thinking. So I'll just ask the candidates to keep in mind this basic principle of group work, which is to step up and step back. So we want to hear what everyone thinks, so please step up with your ideas. And because we want to hear what everyone has to say about these issues, please step back when you've had your chance to speak. So with all that in mind, we present our first challenge. The plan is we'll have 15 minutes or so for conversation, and then you'll have 90 seconds at the end to wrap up without having to worry about being interrupted. So that's the format. And here's the challenge. We are a gloriously diverse community. We are gay, trans, and straight. We are Black, Hispanic, white. We are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, humanist. We are single parents, adults without children, two-parent households with same-sex and opposite-sex partnerships. We are left-leaning progressives and right-leaning conservatives. We are old-timers and newcomers. We are young and we are old. And these descriptors don't even begin to fully capture our diversity or the depth and breadth of our identities. However, some of us, perhaps many more than we imagine, do not necessarily feel fully welcome or safe in our shared community spaces. Many of us also still live with the impacts of institutionalized inequalities. For instance, disparities in public education, maternal health, general wealth gaps, and other easily measurable differences in outcomes. In some instances, what makes some portion of our community safer makes others uncomfortable. For instance, parents of transgender children may want to know that their kids are affirmed in the literature in their school library. Yet the presence of this literature offends and frightens other members of the community. So here's the question. Which of these gaps do you think is most important for the City Council to address? What policies would you recommend? How will you work with the county to ensure fair access to all citizens to all public domains like parks, libraries, and pools? So, which of these gaps do you think it's most important for the City Council to address? And we'll let you take it from here. Who would like to begin? You'll start.
May I just say, if you would like to say something next, just raise your hand so we can get a mic to you.
Go ahead.
I would say returning back to diversity, equity, and inclusion that was started a few years ago. The first manager or director, my good friend Joe Conway, he shared with me the challenges that he faced working with the city government as their chief diversity, equity, inclusion officer. Then the second is come and gone. Having grown up here, I went to church on Wrightsville Sound, across where the Galleria used to be, and not understanding why But when my church would go to the beach, we would go to Atlantic Beach, South Carolina. Although Riceville Beach was right there, we were not allowed or able to visit Riceville Beach or Carolina Beach for that matter because of what we looked like. And as a kid, I didn't understand that while others had the privilege of going to Riceville Beach and Carolina Beach, folks like me didn't. So I'm thankful that we have had a diversion and an infusion of folks from other places coming to our community, bringing more diversity of thought, as well as people with different attitudes that have opened up those things for everyone. Making sure that, when the county received the Human Crate Park from that family, there was a deed restriction that said, no, I won't use the word, we're allowed in that park. Eventually, the county struck that deed restriction. So for me, focusing on embracing everybody, no matter who you are, who you love, what you look like, is important. I was disappointed that the county decided to step back from their DEI initiatives, but at the same time, the city has done the same exact thing. So having the courage to embrace diversity of thought as well as what people look like, where they come from, I think is so vitally important.
I think, for me, my goal has always been to walk in grace. And then what that basically means to me, and you ask, what can I do? What it means to me is that I listen more than I speak. What it means to me is that as I walk in grace, I kind of like try to put myself in another person's shoes. And my goal is always to offer grace first. And that's why, for example, some of the things that we're doing with the unhoused starts off with recognizing people first.
I'll go next. I think for me, when it comes to closing gaps in our community, one of the things that I try to remember is that we have so much more in common than we have in terms of differences with each other. Most of the people that I've met, regardless of background or experiences or anything, like we want to feel safe where we live. We want to be part of a community. We want our children to feel safe. We want our parents to feel safe. And so I think listening to people's stories, understanding their experiences, their obstacles, understanding that they're different than the experiences and obstacles I've had, I think is really important. I guess I'll share this metaphor that I've been taught over the years, and I think about it often, is if we put an elephant in the middle of the room and we seat people around the elephant and we ask everybody to describe what they see, some people are going to describe the trunk, some people are going to describe the tail, some people are going to describe the feet, even though we're all talking about the same thing. And so I think what's really important is bringing all voices in so we get a full picture of an issue. And I think that is absolutely a starting place, is listening, sharing stories, and understanding what we have in common in terms of how we want to move forward and making everybody feel safe. But I think listening and sharing is the first step there.
I had a grandmother that lost her husband at a very young age. She had to raise 3 kids here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and never could speak a word of English. And having to go through that journey as an immigrant to raise 3 young kids in this community back in the 30s was not easy. And I heard those stories, and I understood that journey. I heard it from my grandparents. I heard it from my parents. To be accepting of people, to understand that we are a very diverse nation with diverse backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, being accepting of people. As a mayor, you want to be a uniter, not a divider. And you have to make certain that you're not doing anything that would prejudice anybody in your community that wants to come into this community. America is a country of immigrants from different walks of life. And whatever your orientation is, wherever you are, as a citizen, we need to protect those rights, wherever they may be. This is what this community is about. It should be about. And when we find issues that are dividing us, we need to break them down. And me as mayor sitting here and serving in this position, I would tell you, we are more diverse as a community than we've ever been. But I will also say that we're more segregated than we've ever been. We're segregated in our communities and our neighborhoods, and people not talking to each other. kids of color that don't even go to school with each other. And it's a problem. I grew up in an era in the 70s when we desegregated the schools. And understanding people that you may not play with or you go to school with, you start to realize what somebody's coming from and what they're about and what struggles they're going through. And they get to know you. And you make for a better community by doing that. Thank you.
The interesting thing here, I'm sitting here reading the 5 principles on the back. I actually teach this, basic law enforcement training. It's called de-escalation of communications. And it's exactly what that program's about. And, you know, so I'm gonna say a couple of things. Shalom, marhaba kefalik, mabsut, namaste. I spent 15 years working with the FBI, working against counterterrorism. I have worked with a lot of different people in this community, and I have actually fostered those contacts well before I started working over there. And the whole reason I was chosen to work over there was because of my community contacts. So I understand what it means to get the community together. I've had to have a lot of bad conversation with people. I've had a lot of good conversation with people. So I definitely understand we're all different. And I brought this up before. I've unfortunately worked violent crimes, and you go to an autopsy, everybody's the same. I don't care who you are or what you look like. When things start getting done, you're all the same. And I realized that a long time ago. You know, working together, that's all I've ever done. I work with people with different cultures, backgrounds, beliefs. I work with trans people. I work with gay people. I work with lesbians. I don't care who you are or what you do. As long as you treat me with some respect, I'm going to do the same daggone thing to you. Because that's just about every religion teaches the golden rule. And I'm all about the golden rule. Grew up down at the ports, went up and down ships with my father. I spent a lot of times meeting people from different walks of life. Not only the line handlers that work down in the port who call me Little Billy, but you know, now they still call me Little Billy and I'm a little bit bigger. But you know, I know what it is to meet people from Norway, from Singapore, from Japan, from Taiwan, and and having that difficulty communicating, but usually a lot of that communication, as long as you smiled and were respectful, it went a long way. I have no problem working with anyone, and I think that's what I bring to the table.
Okay, so
I'm
that's
sorry.
great. I just want to insert another question, but you can take it, Cassidy, where you want to go. But question is, so if we acknowledge this general sense of respect and desire to work across differences, to live across differences. Sorry. Okay, so if we acknowledge this set of differences that are here, and Mayor Saffo, as you pointed out, the degree of segregation in the sense that not everybody here does feel equally welcome, and there still are a lot of wounds from past abuses. What policies would you recommend? How would you go about improving this situation as part of the city council?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, were you gonna say something?
I was
or-
going to do it.
Okay. I guess I was very excited to grab the mic because I think what I wanted to share was maybe getting at your question a bit, which is I think we're all accepting and I think that's wonderful to see in our leaders, but what is the role that government plays in inviting people in and showing that acceptance? So I guess I want to share like a personal story of how government has impacted me in that way. We were at an event earlier and I was talking with the mayor about how I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and I went to college 9 hours away in Austin. My parents dropped me off before my 18th birthday. There was 50,000 other students. I didn't know anybody. I was terrified and excited and everything. And I went to the student organization fair. And this guy walked up to me and he said, "Hey Cassidy, we're starting a women's rowing team on campus this year. You look like a rower. Have you ever been a rower?" And I was like, "No, I grew up in the desert. No." Anyway, I try out for the team. I make the rowing team. I represent my school. I'm in strength training programs with future Heisman Trophy winners and the governor of Texas. It was wild the level of access that I had, the opportunity. I had a family away from home. I literally learned to pull my own weight in a boat. And all of that was because of Title IX, because the university had to offer opportunities to women in an equal way that they did to men. And I will tell you that experience changed my life. It probably kept me at school, and it fundamentally taught me important skills that I carry with me all the time. So when I think about policy and DEI programs and things that we can do, it's not about creating division. It's about tapping into potential and providing opportunity for everybody so that we all can rise to be the best version of ourselves. And that's what I would advocate for.
Well, first up, I feel that a city's workforce should reflect the community. It should have diversity in it, and we should always constantly be looking at that. Also, when we are giving contracts, or when we're awarding contracts to different individual groups, we should be looking at minority-owned businesses to ensure that they also get a fair shot at getting those getting that work. The other thing is, from a public policy point of view, our conditional district rezonings, being able to negotiate with folks that are developing property, to include into that, whether it be at market rate or 30% AMI, 60% AMI, or 80% AMI, so you can have a diversity of different folks that will live in that community instead of having it just 30% AMI. I think that's the things that we specifically can do to assure that we are doing our part to reflect what the community looks like, and to also to diversify our neighborhoods. And I think that's a very serious thing that we as a city can do here at the local level.
Great, thank you. Any other ideas?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we do is we have a number of committees and groups or boards that are working in the city, and it's really important to us to make sure that those boards are diversified, that we get citizens like you involved in the boards. And I challenge you to go to the website, look at the boards, look at the positions that are available, that are open, and apply, because we really understand that we can't change the city by ourselves. It has to take all of us to working to do that.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes of conversation.
Yes,
Mr. Craig? Yeah, you should go.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Thank you. Doctor, excuse me. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of partnerships. Again, I work with all kinds of groups of people. Some of the best experiences I've had, especially doing the job that I had, was actually going to military towns, because you go into a military town, you walk into a neighborhood, everybody's different. And it takes, you see a huge difference in the dynamics and in the races and the religions that are there. And it's very, to me, it's very relief. It brings me relief. What I want to do is make sure that I've got time or make time to meet with, no matter what religion. I want community leaders. I want to all sit down together, because you can talk about changing neighborhoods, but the really big thing, you got to change somebody's heart. And sometimes that takes a little bit of work. But my big thing is I want partnerships with everyone. I want everybody to the table. And when you walk in a room, your ego sits outside. There's no ego, there's no rank, there's no I'm better or I'm poor or I'm rich, I'm not. It's everybody's the same. When you go in there, sitting down across from the table to solve problems.
Okay, Mr. Barfield, you want to wrap us up here? And everybody will have a chance.
I would say doing things just like this. Over time, we've had many community conversations. One was on the America's Original Sin, talking about slavery. It was held at the church on Market Street. Conversation around the 1898 memorial. I actually serve on a board called the NC Leadership Forum. We're a statewide organization housed at Duke University, Sanford School of Policy. And we foster conversation with thought leaders across our state around a topic that's pretty much controversial. We convened our cohort this year. We had our first meeting in Flat Rock up in the mountains last week. And the conversations around immigration. And we invite black people, white folks, Republican, Democrat. We want to have folks that have different thoughts and perspectives all across the board to have a conversation, and they get pretty intense at times. Last week, we toured an apple orchard. One of our cohort members owned an apple orchard, and we watched migrants pick apples. And I was thinking, what would my life be if that was my job, 10 hours a day, just picking apples all day, recognizing they're here legally with the H-2 visa. But having those tough conversations, we had one person that was Republican National Committee chairperson for North Carolina in our cohort, expressing her views. And having the ability to have those tough conversations and being sometimes disagreeable, or not agreeing but not being disagreeable is so important. But having stuff like this right here and having those conversations, I think, is the beginning of solving those problems.
Thank you. So just take a second and think about what you would like to say to wrap up. Any final thoughts? Anything that you learned from each other? Anything that you're thinking maybe an interesting policy direction or a practical thing that the city government can do to address this question? And who would like to go first? We have 90 seconds.
Okay. I was actually thinking, as Johnathan was sharing his thoughts, and we oftentimes talk about like having these tough conversations in boardrooms and in committees. But I'd like to challenge the folks that are listening to me now to have these tough conversations at your dinner table. Have these tough conversations at your family cookouts. Have these tough conversations in your church social hall, okay? In places where you meet, because in order to really change it and in order to really make the city the place it's supposed to be, it's not gonna be just because we do policies, okay? It's not because we got a rule. It's not because, okay, the rule says you do this. No, it starts with us sitting down at our tables, sitting down with our children, sitting down with our grandchildren, the people that God allows to cross our paths, and we have some of those tough conversations by having those tough conversations as you walk in grace. Not waving the finger, not blaming, not screaming and hollering, but as you walk in grace, you have those tough conversations with the people that God allows to cross your path.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnett is definitely right. I can only think, I've conducted thousands of interviews. And I've sat across from black separatists, white supremacists, sovereign citizens, actual terrorists, and I've had to have conversations with people, and I hear the rhetoric, and it is not something I appreciate, but I had a job to do. Yes. Every time you talk with somebody, and I teach this when I'm talking with the recruits, that's an opportunity. You're interviewing and interrogating that person. I don't think we're trying to get information out of to charge you. But when you talk to someone else, you're interviewing, you're learning about them. And you don't just hear what they say, you need to listen to what they say. You look at their body language, look how they're talking, you look what they say, look as they smile. You pick up on things from other people, and that's how you make your connection. Your connection shouldn't be what you're wearing, the connection should be that conversation. So, me, again, conversation, getting people together, all walks of life, that's what I want to bring to the table. That's what I want to help with, and, I think I've got the background to do it.
I guess the first thing that strikes me about this discussion is we've sat down for so many of these conversations over the last few months, and every time I learn something new when I listen to these guys talk. So I appreciate that. And I think for me, a big takeaway is, if I have the opportunity to be elected to city council, I think it's going to be important to enter into every conversation with an open mind, be willing to listen to ideas, listen to policy, stand strong in my values, but always be willing to change my mind when I learn something new. And I think that's really the best way to make the best decisions that we can for everybody in the city. It's certainly not easy, but I think it's important, and I think it's worth doing for the residents of our city. So thanks.
I just say from a public policy point of view, I think it's important that everybody has access to their government, and that's what we talk about inclusion, making sure that everybody has a seat at the table, or feels that they have a seat at the table. I think it's important that from an elected body, working with the city staff, is to make sure that we're meeting with all of these different groups that are out there in our community that represent some particular group, to see what are the barriers, what are the concerns, and then bring those issues back to the city council and have a debate as to what we can do to break down those barriers. Because we don't know sometimes, and we have to ask folks that are in the community, because we think we might know at times, but sometimes we don't. And so we get a different perspective when we're listening to the people, and they're giving us their ideas and their thoughts. But I think it's extremely important in any government, whether it be local, state, or federal, that people have some inclusion into those decision makings. Because it makes our public policy easier when we have the input from the citizens. And this is what it's all about, the citizen input. As much as it is what we do here as elected leaders in regards to public policy that we put forward, because we want the public policy to reflect what the people want. But we also have to be able to extract that information from the individuals and from the groups out there that feel that they may be not heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think recognizing that we all want the same thing, all of us do, safe communities, our children to have a quality education, you know, opportunities to have jobs that pay us livable wages, decent and affordable housing. You know, we all want the same thing, be able to go into a department store and get the things that you want to get, or go to a restaurant and be able to order what you want to order. We all want some of the same things here. I mean, at the end of the day, when you cut it to the bone, we're all human. We're all people that want access to the same things that others do, whether you live in Landfall or in Creekwood. Folks in Creekwood want the same things that folks in Landfall want. They want to be in a safe environment. They want to have opportunity to have a job and take care of their families. You know, when my dad got into politics, we lived on Montgomery Avenue in East Wilmington. Back then, there were dirt roads there. My dad got into politics because he wanted his neighborhood to have paved streets like everyone else does. You know, we all want the same things, the quality in the neighborhood and the quality of life that's just like everyone else. And so I believe the government has a role in playing in that and making sure that it's equity. I told both Bruce Young and Chris Goudray as my county managers, you know, black folks pay taxes too. There should be equity in how we spend our resources because everyone pays taxes. And every community should benefit from the taxes they're paying in our community, not one more so than the other. But again, I want what you all want, a great place to live.
Thank you. Okay, so, ready for a new challenge?
No.
Okay.
You want honesty, right?
What? Yeah, we got honesty, yeah. So this could be maybe a fun hypothetical. A longtime Wilmington resident, let's imagine, with generational ties to the city, leaves a substantial sum of money to the city of Wilmington to address the needs of the unhoused population. The gift is to be invested so that its proceeds can sustain programs over time. The following stipulations are made. These are: determine both short and permanent shelter solutions for the current unhoused individuals in the city. Address the top 2 or 3 services needed for these individuals to remain housed, and define how you would measure success in the short and long term. So, again, what are the short and permanent shelter solutions you would recommend investing in with this gifted resource? What are the top 2 or 3 services that would be needed? And how would you measure success in the short and long term? Wonder what we could come up with. Any new ideas here?
I don't feel like I drew the short straw. All right. What's that? What?
Well, I'll stop you, okay?
Oh,
I mean, I can if you want me to.
if you would, yeah, because the 3 ball
I'd be
guys.
glad to. I think that short straw is we would make sure that we have the number of professional workers who are addressing the unhoused as people and not criminalizing them. That's the first thing. I think the long straw would be, and also a short term would be, providing a place for them to live. Now, you can't just provide a place for them to live without also giving them what we call wraparound services. things that will help them to stay on the job or to keep their job or make sure that they go to the doctor, those kinds of things. So I think that the short term, of course, is to get as many people as we can, professionals, on the streets to help with the other 27 agencies that we have in the city who are working with the unhoused, not just the folks downtown, because unhoused is not just the people that live downtown, but there are unhoused folks throughout the city. How can we provide professionals to help them so that they're not being criminalized or, and then the second thing, of course, is we've got to provide housing. And when you provide the housing, we do want the wraparound services. How do I measure that? You measure it by the successes of the people that you put in the house. Okay, you measure how they're doing. And unfortunately, we would understand that oftentimes when you take one person off the street, someone else will take that same spot.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome, sir.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, part of the topic, you talk about criminalizing, you know, homelessness, and it's not a crime. I mean, I can tell you a thing or two about crime. It's not a crime. Acts, you know, like someone told me one time, so you judge me because of what? I said, I don't judge you, I judge your action. So, you know, judging action, that's another thing. As Mr. Barnett said, yeah, you gotta have those services, because if you don't have those services, you're just kind of throwing somebody to the wolves. You know, backing them up, talking to them, making sure they have what they need, you know, if it's helping with resumes, if it's helping with, you know, whatever. I know, I forgot the name of it. I went down and met the folks at the Harrelson building. They have a small, organization there helping out the homeless. And, you know, the conversation I had, and it's like Mr. Barnett said, there's 26, 27 of these services or these nonprofits that are out there. If you talk to them, put them in a room, they're all gonna say, we're doing great, but they actually all run there in their own lane. And, you know, I don't think that does you any good. I don't think that does anybody any good. You know, trying to find spots to put people, you know, single housing, you got, drawing a blank.
Eden Village.
Thank you, Eden Village. He's pulling me up here. Eden Village, I try to help a friend of mine get in there, but the problem is he's got a girlfriend and 2 kids, and that's all for single people. I get it, he understands it, so I got him in touch with Link, trying to get him, you know, some help. But you know, you can't look at anybody, if somebody's dirty, you can't look at them like that. If you saw me earlier today, I was under a car trying to get a cat out of somebody's engine block. I was dirty. You looked at me and were like, who is this guy? True story. But you gotta look at people as who they are. You do have to provide services. I am a little leery of what the city is talking about until I learn more about adding the social workers with police officers, because I have a big concern if the social workers go into an area with a police officer, if something happens, and somebody said, teach me how to use a taser. Well, guess what? A taser doesn't work all the time. You know, you're asking a civilian to deploy a taser and then say, what do I do now? I do have a big concern about their safety, and then safety of the officer, and actually the safety of the person they're talking to. But you know, everybody needs to work together. We need those groups. We need the housing. Finding the housing is going to be reaching out and see what we can find. I mean, that's all I can tell you right now.
You know, we have that benefactor right now. It's called the New England County Community Endowment. And if they were to step up and do the right thing, we could solve this problem and put a pretty dent in it with 1 year's interest dividends. You know, recognizing $50, $60 million a year can come in from this endowment. For me, it's about investing in the nonprofits doing the work to give them greater capacity. The county and the city, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, we convened a meeting with those 26 plus providers, and they gave us their recommendations. The problem with local government leaders is that we don't listen. We have more task force and committees that meet and then bring us recommendations, and then we put them on the shelf and not listen to those folks. And then they feel like they've been abused and used because they wasted their time, energy, and efforts. And that's how many of these providers feel. But if you give them the right resources financially to increase their capacity, the Good Shepherd building more homes now. Thankfully, the city gave them the old fire station on Carolina Beach Road. They're building housing there now. They built housing around Greenfield Lake. But giving that capacity, you can get folks off of the street. My phrase is often, there before the grace of God, there go I. You know, that could be Johnathan Barfield Jr., that guy that's homeless right now. My father, he actually owned about 4 rooming houses here for quite a long time. 2 on Church Street and 2 on Rankin Street and 1 on Campbell Street. And it was his way of helping young men that were struggling have someplace decent to live, shared bathroom, shared kitchen, very inexpensive rent, but they had a roof over their head. He said, son, you can't kick a man when he's down. You know, recognizing again that could be you or I next week. But I've seen folks from landfall that I went to Bible studies with that lost it all and tried to figure out how do I take care of my family, and they decided to check out and take their lives because they didn't want to be that person on the street. So you just never look down on folks because it could be us. But again, the government can indeed invest in more of these nonprofits and give them more money to create greater capacity.
I really like this question because this is a gift, and Jonathan's right. We have the endowment, which is a funding source that doesn't necessitate increasing our tax rate to help solve this issue. I've heard people who work in this space say we could solve homelessness in our city with $50 million, for example. So what could we do with a $50 million gift? I think it's you know, we've heard folks talk about, I think we need to expand our emergency shelter beds for families, for seniors. We're over capacity in our emergency shelters. I live right around the corner from Good Shepherd, and my daughter and I volunteer for dinner service there on a fairly regular basis. And I see the folks staying at Good Shepherd as our neighbors who need help. And I'm really touched every time I work dinner service. I think part of some of the early services that we can expand that Good Shepherd offers is making sure that folks have identification so that they can get a job, making sure that they have an email address and a phone so that when they apply for a job, they can get a call back. Access to physical and mental health services so that folks are healthy enough to get back on their feet and enter into work programs. And then I think expanding our permanent supportive housing offerings. Lakeside Reserve, also around the corner from us in a different direction. I think we've seen some great things there in terms of what folks can get offered when they have a safe place to stay, it's stable, and they get the services that they need from social workers. I'm so excited to see the Sparrow under construction and coming online. I think at the end of the day, though, it's just really important to remember that folks that are unhoused are our neighbors, and it benefits all of us when all of our neighbors are safe, when they're in stable housing. And really the way to do that is to offer low barrier housing from the beginning. So given this gift, those are the things that I would focus on.
Cindy, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question is this working? Determine both short and permanent shelter solutions for the current unhoused individuals within the city. Address the top 2 or 3 service needs for these individuals and define how you would measure success in the short and long term. And I just have been thinking about a question that came up in some of the responses of concerns that, like, already Wilmington is known for providing more services than a lot of other places, so people come here. Is that a problem that you would want to address in the policies that you would?
Well, I think it's a problem that all local governments are going to have to address, because if you look at Onslow County with 212,000 people, Pender County with about 90, Brunswick, which is almost at 200, Horry County, which is 461,000, and New Hanover County about 240,000. And we have 27 providers concentrated in the city of Wilmington. and you look at the other providers around the region of about 1 million people, I'm not saying that they're telling them, go there, but if the service is not there in their community, that's where it is, and more come. I believe in one sense that the number of people that we have currently have overrun the system. And yes, the providers need more money for more beds. Short-term, low-barrier shelter is where we need to go. We need to allow folks that, for whatever no reasons, if we want to get them in there and they're having, or they're intoxicated or on drugs, or whatever the case is, we can get them in there. It's going to provide, you're going to have to provide some security for that particular shelter, because a lot of the shelters are not going to allow people that are having an episode, a mental episode, or if they're drunk, or if they're high on drugs, they're not going to allow them in that shelter, because we have kids in those shelters, we have families in those shelters, we have elderly people in those shelters. And if you go to any of the providers that are providing any kind of shelter space, they have rules and regulations as to when you cannot go there. So low barrier shelter is very important, and the city has a number of properties that we are willing to put up and hopefully partner with a nonprofit that would help provide that low barrier shelter. That's short-term solution. Mental health. We need more mental health beds. We have a mental health crisis that are going on in our country. And if you look at what's happening out at behavioral health at the hospital, they don't have enough beds. We've been talking about that through the report that we did in 2024. We need a lot more mental health places to take people. There's not that many. And usually they take them to the hospital to do an evaluation. They're giving them a couple of pills, and they're sending them right out the door, and it's coming right back at us. Police officers are dealing with it every single day. And by the way, if a police officer is involved in that, that police officer has got to accompany that individual at the hospital for several hours, taking that police officer off the beat. Permanent supportive housing is the only way that you can solve a lot of these issues. And I am proud of the fact that we took a vote many years ago in the Lakeside Reserve, 48 units, when the neighborhood was literally going to kill us, for allowing people to have a place to go there with supportive services. It works if you have the supportive services. And Katrina Knight, a Good Shepherd, said to me, trust me on this, this works. We trusted her, and I do trust her, and it did work. And those folks that live in those units are wonderful. We've never had a problem there. It's been great. But you've got to have the supportive services, because a lot of the individuals that are going into these folks need that supportive services. They really need it. They need the mental health. They need a lot of different things. But you've got to have the supportive services to go behind it. We felt so good about Lakeside Reserve. We're doing it at the Sparrow now, on Carolina Beach Road, an old fire station the city had. We gave it to Katrina again, Good Shepherd Ministry. We put over $1 million in there, gave the property there, 34 units of housing for our unsheltered with supportive services. It works. We need more of that. But I also have a concern, literally, of the amount of folks that are coming here from other areas. And I've heard this from other elected leaders that says, we don't have to provide that service if it's there. And that's just one of the things they don't have to deal with. So more are going to come, and there's nothing we can do about that. We shouldn't turn them away. And the other thing I will also say is, part of this unsheltered issue that we are dealing with, which has really risen in the last 15 years, also is tied back into the opioid epidemic. And we're one of the first cities and counties to have sued the distributors of opioids. Well, we were able to obtain $27 million from the distributors of opioids to be used to get people into recovery. And that's also critically important. This is going to come down to money. It's going to come down to resources. It's going to come down to what we're willing to do as a community. Also trying to balancing the fact that we need better roads, we need police pay, and all the other things. So it is a challenging issue, to say the least, but our service providers do a tremendous job day in and day out. Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to take your question about people coming to Wilmington for services. I want to take a step back and reframe that. There are a lot of people with houses who come to Wilmington for services. It's not just unhoused people. People come here for entertainment, people come here for their jobs, people come here because this is where the regional hospital is, people come here for the Azalea Festival, people come here for the beaches. There are a lot of people that come into our community for services that are not just unhoused people. And I think for me, it's important to reframe this conversation around like unhoused people are just coming here for the services. That's why everybody is coming here, because Wilmington is awesome. It's a great city, and I'm not ashamed that we're a city that is a place that people want to be. I think we have to address how we balance that and how we make sure that the entire region is participating in what makes us such a wonderful region. But I just want to point out that this is not just something that unhoused people do. This is something all of us do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the kind of conversation part of this and give everybody like 90 seconds to say any last thoughts, any new ideas, any questions that remain in your mind, any dilemmas you think we're facing. Who would like to start?
I just went, so I'll let someone else go first.
Excuse me. Mr. Saffo did mention something about people coming here. I can tell you in 2002, when a friend of mine called me up from downtown, owns a restaurant, and says, I got this guy laying out here, I think he's dead. We got a unit there, and one thing he said is, I'm from Myrtle Beach. Well, he said I'm from Arizona, but he said he got here from Myrtle Beach because Myrtle Beach, and I'm not lying to you, and it sounds crazy, but Horry County Myrtle Beach PD would give them a bus ticket and say, go to Wilmington. And they would get here, and one of the things is the cops would tell them is, go to Wilmington, the cops don't mess with you there. And we do have a lot of services here. And it does put somewhat of a strain. As Saffo mentioned, the mental health part of that too. Yeah, when people go to the hospital, it's, they're dual diagnosed. A lot of times, they show up there either intoxicated, on drugs, but they also have a mental health issue. And we don't have the facilities, we used to, we don't have the facilities to really handle that. So the hospital does kick them out the door, because once they treat them for one thing, they're done. And it talks about the opioid epidemic, and I lost my 19-year-old niece to a drug overdose. That really stuck to me. But
A few more seconds.
I'm sorry.
A few more seconds. A few more seconds.
Oh, a few more seconds. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that because she told me a few more seconds, and thank you.
Thanks. Who wants to go?
In my 90 seconds, I believe I'd want you to know a little bit more about me. And that I don't want you to just elect me because I'm an incumbent. I challenge you to look at my record. I challenge you to look at the things that we've had the privilege to do on the council. I challenge you to go back and look at some of the city council meetings and perhaps see which person on the council has the calmest voice. I challenge you to look at my record and look at some of the things that I've had the privilege to do. I've had the privilege of being honored by Colin Powell in America's Promise. When I pastored a church in Portsmouth, Virginia, we worked with Habitat for Humanities. We built 10 houses in 2 weeks. I challenge you to look at my work that I've done with grandparents raising grandchildren. I've spoken on the Capitol grounds a number of times. I've done workshops for Marilyn Wright Edelman. I challenge you to look at my record and see that I was honored by President George Bush, the younger one, at the White House lawn. I challenge you to watch what I do every morning when I'm at D.C. Virgo Middle School from 6:45 to 7:30, greeting every kid that gets off a bus and every child that gets out of a car. I challenge you to look at what I do for grandparents who are raising grandchildren. And I think that means that's it, right? All right, thank you much.
I guess sure, I'll go. I think, I guess one of the things that I'd say is I think up here we're all in a lot of agreement in terms of the steps that we need to take to solve homelessness issues in our city. I think it's a matter of doing it. If we all agree what we need to do and how to get there, then I think we need to continue to take the steps that we have. I think recently it's been great to see City Council think about how to invest in solving these issues in really important ways, and I think we've just got to keep going. So I guess that's what I'm taking away from this is like the conversation is great and it's nice to reach agreement, but now let's go. Let's get it done.
Okay. Anybody else?
My favorite author, John Maxwell, says it best, that everything rises and falls on leadership. Having served on the county commission, the most powerful governing body at the local level for 16 years, being chair, being vice chair, leading the conversations that made our community what it is today, I'm proud of. My goal is to make sure that everyone has a voice in their local government. And being that connection between the state and the county for the city, I think is what I bring to the table. What I mean by the state, I've had 3 gubernatorial appointments. I was appointed by Governor Perdue to serve on the Sheriff's Education Training Standards Commission, appointed by Governor Cooper to serve on Cape Community College Board of Trustees, and most recently appointed by Governor Stein to serve on the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, where I was at today convening a meeting with my fellow commission members. Being able to connect Raleigh with the City of Wilmington is so important. I was on Governor Stein's transition team, one of 3 folks from our community that he selected to be a part of his transition team, as I co-chaired the committee that selected and interviewed candidates for Secretary and Deputy Secretary of Military and Veteran Affairs, because I'm a Navy veteran. I started my public service at the age of 17 when I enlisted into the Navy to serve a total of 6 years, both active duty and reserves, and then I gave myself to my community to serve as a county commissioner for 16 years. So I truly believe that we all should give back as much as we can and be a voice and a light for others in our community, to be that beacon of hope that if I can do it, you can do it as well. So I appreciate and humbly ask for your support and your vote.
Being a lifelong resident of Wilmington and somebody that grew up in an ethnic family that immigrated to this great country, and understanding the journey that they've had to go through and the life that they've been able to bestow upon us and what this community gave them, I feel there's a responsibility that I have to also give back to the best of my ability. I love this community, I love this city, and I hope that I have demonstrated over the years that I have served as your mayor, that I've held it in great esteem, and I've done a good job with working with the other council members, because I believe that anything is possible in politics, if you don't mind who gets the credit. But more importantly is how do you work with other people? And building consensus between local governments, county governments, state governments, and federal governments is extremely important to how we get things done here in the city of Wilmington. We've been recognized as one of the top cities in the country in so many different accolades that we've gotten. That wasn't just because of one entity or one person. That was a collective action of a lot of different people working over a number of years, from the Vision 2020 plan to the North Side plan to our land use plans, working with Chamber of Commerce, with many different groups around in making this the community that we have today. And I want to continue to move this community forward. This is a great city and great community. And I thank you for that honor, and I hope that you vote for me on November the 4th. Thank you.
Okay, so we have one more. Does everyone have a chance to speak here?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
We
okay.
went out of order, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Which is good.
So we have one more problem-solving challenge. Perhaps a sadly contemporary one. This is about immigration. So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, as of 2023, the American Community Survey one-year estimates, the city of Wilmington, North Carolina had 9,544 Hispanic or Latino residents, representing approximately 8.3% of the city's total population. Here's a hypothetical, but not too far-fetched, unfortunately. Suppose federal ICE agents came to Wilmington and the National Guard from a nearby red state was deployed to, quote, protect them. What, if anything, can the City Council do in the coming months to prepare our community for such a possibility? How would you react if citizens are rising up in the streets to protest nonviolently? What goals would you have as you make these plans? Who would you want to assist in this moment? So the hypothetical is that there are ICE agents coming here, and that the National Guard from a nearby state was deployed to protect them. What can the City Council do in the coming months to prepare our community for such a possibility? Unfortunately, not too far-fetched.
Well, just so you know, there's ICE agents already here. They work here. Most of the cases they work are jail cases. Someone gets arrested, they actually go out to the jail. They're not really going out banging on doors saying you're coming with me. The other part of that too is, you know, a lot of your detention stuff falls on the sheriff. That falls on the county, not police. So there's a little bit of cushion there. What concerns me is, you know, well, one, you know, if people want to rise up or protest in the streets, one, they're not supposed to protest in the street. You know, you're not supposed to do that. You can be on the sidewalk, you can be calm and collected. You want to scream and yell, that's fine. Just don't do anything illegal. That's all any cop would ever ask. The other thing too is you're probably not going to know if that happens. You're not, the city and the county are not going to be read into that. It'll just occur. The other thing to that too is, you know, if a city, a county, a government entity, a police department, or sheriff's office does not follow a lawful order, that city or county, like the sheriff's office and police department, both CALEA certified, they can lose a CALEA certification. That police officer who swore an oath that just went through 880 hours of basic law enforcement training could be looked at and said, that's dereliction of duty, you're fired, or you're charged. There's a lot of civil and criminal penalties that could go along with that. And, you know, if an officer stops somebody and they run the tag and it's, you know, got a, you know, dead tag, they walk to the car, they run the person's information. If it says you shall arrest because there's an ICE detainer on them, the officer has to arrest. Not you may, or you should, you shall. That's a mandatory thing. So, you know, don't look at the officer, you know, wrong for doing their job. And if people want to protest, peaceful protest is fine. I have no problem with peaceful protest. You know, for 30 years I swore an oath. And I used to have to do it every 2 years while I was assigned with the FBI. I had to get sworn in every 2 years, and I took an oath. And my oath is to protect everyone, not just you, or you. And, you know, a lot of cops, a lot of law enforcement, they take that very seriously. So, you know, the big thing is you got to work it. Unfortunately, some people might go to jail, but I don't see that happening here, and I'm just basing that on experience.
This is a very timely question, so thank you for asking it. I think from my perspective, the place that I would start is remembering for myself and as a leader, sharing with our community that every single person in the borders of the United States has constitutional rights and protections, freedom of speech, due process. And I would advocate for making sure that those constitutional rights are in place for every single person within the city. I don't think it's responsible for local law enforcement to be required to enforce anything outside of their jurisdiction. And I think for me, I guess I'll share, like, I think I've shared already, but I grew up in El Paso, Texas, which was not 8% Hispanic, it was 85%, 90% Hispanic. And some of the actions that we've seen recently with ICE in cities across the country are concerning because of the racial profiling that's happening. And I think as a leader, it's important to set the expectation that that's not who we are, that's not what we're going to do. We can disagree on a lot of things, we can disagree on a lot of policy, but at the end of the day, protecting our constitutional rights is something that we should all do for each other all the time. It is the foundation of our country and our society, and I'm gonna, I guess, do the best that I can to protect everybody as much as I can.
You know, in today's society, there's no way for a community to even prepare for this because we're seeing it happen in real time, where the federal government is weaponizing law enforcement based on politics. As I mentioned, I was out in western North Carolina a week and a half ago at an apple orchard, and the lady who owns the orchard, I'm sure she's Republican, she was like, Johnathan, and she told our whole group, number one, Americans don't want to do this work. We can't get anyone to do this work in our country. We have to have immigrants coming in. At the same time, when our cohort came to visit our apple orchard, many of the folks that were there, although they're here legally, decided to leave because they were intimidated by such a large crowd of folks coming in, not knowing whether someone would try to remove them from doing the work that they're doing here in our country. You know, these are real issues. Now, what I do know is that the chief of police works directly for the city council. And I think it's the city council that can give directive to that chief of police on what we want and do not want, what we will and will not stand for. You know, as I mentioned before, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in the county outside of the DA when it comes to the jail and those kind of things. But I think city council can give the chief of police a directive not to do X, Y, and Z and maintain that. You know, but we have a history in our country. Back in World War I or II, you had the Japanese that were being put in internment camps. When 9/11 happened, you had Muslim folks that were being racially profiled by law enforcement because they could be the next terrorists. And now it's the Latino folks that are being targeted. You know, in the 60s and 50s, it was people that looked like me with Jim Crow being targeted for certain things. We have a history in our country of those things happening. And it's not until folks stand up and speak up that those things stop. It's almost like what happened in Nazi Germany when folks didn't stand up. And you see a whole race of people almost annihilate because folks step by and watch as opposed to saying something. And to me, we have a lot of folks that are not speaking up and saying their piece and stopping this nonsense. And when we all stand up collectively, we can stop it. But you can't be afraid. You've got to speak your mind and say enough is enough. And we haven't done that yet.
I agree with what Johnathan has said. And I think one of the challenges that I have with the question, with the scenario, is, of course, making sure that we stay within the law. And I think it would be a great opportunity maybe for us as a city now to sit down and do debate that, like do the what ifs. But I would understand that we're limited by what we can do based on the law. And I think that's where I am right now. I think it would be a good opportunity for us to sit down and think about that because prevention is help a lot of cures, whatever that thing is. You're gonna help me out on that.
Well, I think that Cliff said it best. When we take an oath of office, our oath is to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the said state, not inconsistent with the federal laws. So whether it's a police officer that also is taking an oath, they have to uphold the law. The law is the law. But we do have powers. And those powers are to pick up and say, Governor, we need your help. Congressman Rouser, we need your help. Senator Tillis, we need your help. Senator Budd, we need your help. That's what your federal representatives are there for. Now, whether they do that or not, I can't tell you, but I would do everything in my power to see what we can get and what kind of help we can get. The other thing is, our first job is to protect the citizens. And those citizens that want to protest, as long as it's a lawful protest, peaceful protest, we're going to do everything in our power to protect your right to free speech and to do what you want to do. And that's our job at the local level. As Billy said, we have ICE agents here, we have immigration agents here, we have ATF here, FBI is here, Secret Service is here. all the federal agencies are already located in your community, and they deal with this stuff every single day. We hope that we do not see that, and I don't think we will see that. But that's what our jobs would be what can we do to persuade or to help or to stop that type of action, especially for a National Guard unit to come from a neighboring state, which I've never, and I'm sure it's possibly happened, but that would be very unusual for them to come from another state into the state of North Carolina. But I definitely, I know that we have relationships with Governor Stein, and I know how Governor Stein feels about these issues, but it could be a very real scenario. And I will take it one step further. As the mayor that was here during COVID, and understanding the different laws that came down, and those laws were contested in the state in courts about when you could pray, when you could meet, when you couldn't meet, how you had to wear a mask. And dealing with that, and the CDC, and the federal government, and the state government was maddening, literally maddening, to the point where the laws that we were trying to enforce here locally, we as elected leaders were being targeted to try to protect people, to try to protect people's health. It's a tough scenario to be in today when you're starting to see a lot more heavy-handedness from the federal side. But we're prepared to deal with it if we have to. And I've already dealt with something like that before, and it was not easy.
So are there things that you think the city could do to help prepare the community?
I think, yeah. You need to let the community know what's about to happen. And I guarantee a lot of people that would be possibly affected by this would make preparations. Yeah, you definitely have to prepare the community for something of this magnitude, absolutely. Because it's not only going to be the community that's going to be involved in this. There's going to be other activists from around the state and from around the country that will also come here and be part of this also. And we've seen that in other protest movements. So it's not just going to be the community itself. And law enforcement is going to have to be involved. The local government's going to have to be involved. All of us are going to have to be there at the table, because this is a very serious issue that would transpire in our communities. And anything could happen. It could get very volatile. It could get very violent very quickly. And we've seen that on a lot of different issues over the years. So first and foremost is the protection is public safety. Our job is to protect the citizens of that community. 50% of the city's budget is public safety. You look at our budgets going back, and that's probably most cities in America. 50% of their budgets is public safety. So our first goal is to protect the citizens of this community.
Were you,
Just want to,
yeah, I'll go next.
I'll reiterate again, what we're seeing in real time, there is no time to prepare. We're seeing the National Guard deployed just like that on communities, and there's no community conversation time to have. It happens just that quick. It's happening just that quick. So I don't know how you prepare a community when you don't know what the person that's making those decisions that's living in your state is making in real time, and next thing you know, you see the National Guard on your doorstep, and targeting blue states as opposed to red states. This can't be about politics. It's got to be about America. But again, as a county commissioner over the whole entire county, I don't know how I would prepare anyone when the next day I see the troops coming in and we had no forewarning, because they're not getting warnings, they're just showing up.
Yeah, the thing I was going to add that I think leaders can do all the time, not just in a situation like this, is to engage with the community and the people who live here and help folks understand what their rights are. How can you publicly protest legally? What are the ways to stay safe? How do you work with law enforcement? And I think that kind of education is really important. Unfortunately, I think there are a lot of folks who live in our city who maybe don't have a full understanding of what their rights are and how to exercise them. And I think when we're talking about immigrant communities in particular and the vulnerabilities that they feel, I think it's important that we provide that education in languages that they speak and understand, so that we're not, things are literally not getting lost in translation. So I think that's one thing as well.
One of the comments before made me think that there's this moment when we want to protect the citizens, but we also, many of us, I think, are concerned that the federal government is overreaching in ways that are really dangerous. You even evoked what happened in Germany. So what are our responsibilities if that's our picture of what's happening? Do you think that that's where we're heading in the federal direction in this country? I see Billy saying
No, I mean, to compare Nazi Germany to now, I mean, you know, you had a madman going in, kicking in doors, putting guns in people's head, taking the guns from them. You know, if they were a different religion, if they were a different sexual orientation, they were getting loaded on a train, and executed. Let's not confuse that, please. Let's not also look at, when you make comment about, you know, both have made comments about law enforcement. You know, your police department, you talk about public safety, your police department's 80 officers short. Minimum staffing is 280, is down to 200. So you want to talk about, you know, your safety, you're having issues with safety now, you don't even know it. And, you know, as I said before, you're not going to get read in. The local government, if it were to occur, the local government's not going to get read in. They're not going to get told about it. The other thing too is I want you to think about your immigrants that are here are not stupid. They see what's going on, and I guarantee you, I've talked to a few of them, they're prepared. They have an idea of what to do and what not to do. You know, they get it. A lot of those folks though that are, you know, went through proper channels, got here, great. You mentioned about, you know, police officers who's going in, I think the comment was, like doing these roundups, you know, they're going into the neighborhoods. I want y'all to understand, it's not just officers kicking in doors. It is intel work, it is information, it might be in a credit history report for that person. They might have credit in the United States, and now that's their address. Cops aren't just going kicking in doors because, you know, oh my goodness, there's somebody who looks different. There's more intel behind it. It's not just, oh, like my buddy Jorge, there's Jorge right there. He's from Guatemala, I'm gonna go arrest him. You know, that's not how it works. There's intel that goes behind that stuff. There is investigations. It doesn't just happen. So please, if nothing else, please keep that in the back of your head when you're looking at a lot of this, or you see a lot of this. It's not as much of a, I'm trying to think of the proper word. It is not much of a police state like you think. It is actually, there's investigations that go behind it. You know, again, I've done all kinds of stuff, and I know what goes into when you have to go up and knock on somebody's door politely or with a ram. I understand that. And, you know, so just please keep that in mind. You know, the folks that are here, they're not stupid. They see what's going on, they're paying attention. So that's just my 2 cents.
I'll chime in one more time. You know, as a person of color, I've had to have that conversation with all of my children about how to respond to law enforcement. My youngest daughter was babysitting for some folks at Curie Beach. She left the home at night, was followed by a Curie Beach police officer for no reason other than what she looked like. She left her hat at the people's home, went back to go get it, and he stalked her. I eventually called the chief down there. He said, well, her car didn't belong in that neighborhood. I'm like, look, dude, you're in a tourist community. How do you know what car belongs in what neighborhood, number one? You know, other than this kid being someone that was of brown persuasion. Recently, another daughter got pulled over, and I came where she was, and I'm talking to the officers during COVID. I'm as polite as I can be, because I respect law enforcement. As a commissioner, I funded everything my sheriff asked for. Made sure they had the top pay, everything that they needed, they got from Commissioner Barfield. But I'm talking to this guy in the most polite voice I can have, and the look on his face is like, I will shoot you. It's what I felt fear in my heart. And I extended my hand. I'm not shaking your hand, it's during COVID. But you could hear this guy's conversation with me. You could see me on the body cam, but you couldn't see him. So later I called the chief, and I didn't say anything. He said, yeah, I heard your daughter got pulled over. I said, well, you probably saw me, but you didn't see this man's face. But he went back and listened to the conversation. He called and apologized to me. No one should ever talk to you that way, whether you're Commissioner Barfield or not. And I recognize when I served on the Sheriff's Education Training Standards Commission, that board, we actually revoked officers' ability to serve because they're doing stupid things. We're all human, we all do stupid things. Those things happen. And being aware and being hyper aware when you look like me, you have to be. But again, unlike some folks on this dais, I've had to have those conversations with my own children to remind them of how you respond. Because you may not come home if you say the wrong thing, because those things happen.
And I guess real talk, because Johnathan and I, we go to the same barber. But,
Billy?
oh yeah, and Billy, and Billy, and Billy, and Billy. But real talk. I'm 71 years old. I have 3 awesome kids. I've had my son, who is the nicest person in the world next to me, pulled over by a cop. And literally the cop searched him and all that kind of stuff. I was driving home from a church service, had on my collar, black suit, and the police pulled me over. And he said because I rolled through a stop sign. But not only did he pull me over, but he had 4 or 5 other police officers out, and they pulled the gun out on me. Okay, I mean, real talk. So our walk is a little different. Okay, in that oftentimes I'm judged based on what people see. I went to an event once here in Wilmington. I was signing in at the table, and the lady behind the desk didn't know who I was. Mayor Pro Tem, good looking, blue suit, necktie, the whole 9 yards. And she didn't know who I was, and so she was giving me like the runaround. Well, are you sure you're supposed to be, where you supposed to be? And so then the sheriff came up and said, oh, I know, come on, Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, come on, Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. And he took me to table 1. The lady who was like supposed to be there to make sure I got all the dignitaries got in and stuff, she actually came to my table and apologized. Anybody hear what I'm saying? Okay, well, let me explain it to you. She apologized because the lady at the desk was treating me like a person that has the same hairstyle as Johnathan. Okay? That's what was happening. And oftentimes, and I don't get bitter, I don't get angry, anything like that, but we have to, being African American in these United States of America, we have to teach our kids not to get bitter. We got to teach our kids to drive 10 and 2. We got to teach our kids when you're pulled over. And I'm not saying anything bad about cops, because all cops are not bad, but we've got to teach our kids, keep your hands up. We got to have that conversation, okay? Because Johnathan said, unfortunately, some of our kids don't get home, okay? And that's just, you want to have the talk, that's the real talk, okay?
So this is a perspective that you bring to this question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can't get away from that because I am who I am. When I walk in the room, people know I'm me. And unfortunately, sometimes people put labels, just like they put labels on immigrants or labels on Jews, or short people. There you go.
Anybody else want to comment on this?
You do?
Yeah,
Okay.
first question, when you were pulled over and the officers drew on you, was that here?
No.
Okay, no, I just,
It wasn't in Wilmington.
I want to make sure, because I was going to say, you and I need to have a conversation after this. I teach my kids the same thing, 10 and 2. I'm going to tell you right now, you get pulled over, 10 and 2, yes sir, no sir, whatever. I've been accused because of the way I cut my hair and the way I look of being a white supremacist. I do understand that to some degree, not the full degree. Please understand that. You're walking in a room and somebody looks at you like, and to hear that really upsets me. To hear, him talk about getting pulled over and that, having a gun pulled on him, that's, and you've said it before, most of these cops are good. I remember pulling a guy one night, had a gun on him, and it come to find out he owned a bar in town that they had 3 shootings there that week. Stopped for running a red light, walked up, handed the gun back. I said, "You knew that more than I do. Have a nice night." And he looked at me like I was crazy. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I handed him this gentleman who is African-American his pistol back. He thought I'd lost my mind. I still remember the gentleman's name, Clyde Caesar. Again, conversations, that stuff needs to come out. That stuff needs to be discussed. I don't put up with it. I put cops in prison. Not here, thank goodness, but in other areas of the state, and Louisiana and a couple other places. That's unacceptable. And I'm extremely irritated to hear things like that. Oh, on your side, that is. I hope you understand.
I understand.
All right.
Sure.
Sorry, I just had to.
I appreciate that.
So we're kind of coming to the wrapping up of this conversation. And so I want to offer you each the 90 seconds to just summarize any thoughts. It's been a kind of far-ranging conversation, opened a lot of doors for interesting and important questions about what it means to work together, what it means, what safety means for different people in our community, how we might prepare for something that happens very suddenly, what can we do ahead of time. So let's take just a minute to think and then to share your concluding thoughts, and then we'll have a final question for the whole evening.
Well, first, you have to make preparations, and I would hope that our police chief, our new chief, would make preparations for something, an event like that. I'm sure that they would. I hope they would. Number 2, you definitely have to be in contact with your governor and with your attorney general, because the other part of this that we haven't talked about is the court process. We still have checks and balances in the country of what we think we have. And even though the court system has been challenged, they have upheld and overturned some of the decisions that have been made at the federal level. And you can look at that. So I think they also play a very important role in this. And then you have to prepare the community the best you can to protect the community. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the issues during the Vietnam War, the aftermath of the assassination of Martin Luther King, and what happened in our communities. And we had National Guards in many major cities throughout this country. The things that were going on there, and of course, first and foremost, is trying to protect people and property at the local level, and that's extremely important. And do the best you can to prepare the community for what might happen. If you're aware of it, if you're not aware of it, and they roll into town and this happens, the first thing you want to do is get on the phone and try to get the help at the state level and hopefully at the federal level. But I will go to the state here first. Your governor and your attorney general are going to be the 2 individuals that you're going to have to talk to first.
I think there are a lot of places that my mind is going as a result of this conversation. I guess it is pretty wild to me that we are at a point in our country where we are having very real conversations about situations like this. I think it speaks to the political divisions in our country that have divided us in so many other ways besides politics. And I really hope that we elect local leaders who will work to repair those divisions and find things in common to help do that and diffuse some of the fear and vulnerability that folks are feeling. I think personally, as somebody who grew up in a border town as part of an international city, this topic is very difficult for me because it's so hard for me to think about a topic like this without seeing my family or my friends or my classmates that I grew up with. And so I think, my experiences are always going to weigh into decisions. And then as a parent whose 10-year-old is in the audience for this very tense conversation, on the one hand, I'm really glad that she's exposed to it, and on the other, I think it's important that we all have these conversations continuously, and these difficult conversations, and we do it in a way that we can be proud of how we behave in front of our kids. I'll pass it on.
I'm
I think I'd go back to something I said earlier, and it's basically that we need to talk to the people that cross our path. We still got to talk to the people that cross our paths. I don't want to build a community of fear. I don't want people to be afraid to talk to your neighbor or talk to the person at the grocery store or the person that comes to your event. I think we need to continue the conversation, and I think it's like this, and my philosophy is more, you talk as long as you can, and if you feel yourself getting heated or, you back up. You back up. I think you mentioned it earlier. Didn't you say something about step up? Then when you said enough, it's kind of step back. Okay, watch this. Step up, now I'm stepping back.
Thinking about the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and actually the county got started with me. During COVID, we had nurses deployed at the senior resource center, so our county employees could go by and get a mask and get the temperature taken. And I go to Longleaf Park every day and walk. I'm in a ball cap, t-shirt, shorts, look like the average person off the streets. My wife works for the county library. She was there, so I stopped by to see her, and I asked one of the county nurses, could I have a mask? And her question was, you work for the county? She's been with the county for 12 years. She should know who Johnathan Barfield is. One of two people who look like me that's been a county commissioner. And she goes on and on and on why I couldn't have a mask. And then when she realized, this one woman said, you don't know who he is? When the light bulb went off, her conversation was, but you're not dressed like. I said, well, these are my clothes. How am I supposed to dress? So I go back the next week to see my wife, same dress. Another nurse is there. So I asked her for a mask. Her question was, do you work for the county? She know I'm getting sick and tired of this mess. Look at the picture on the wall behind you, and then ask me if I work for the county. Then the light bulb goes off. She said the same exact thing, but you're not dressed like. I said, well, how am I supposed to dress? I don't wear a three-piece suit when I go to the park and walk, but her mindset was I was the average Negro walking in off the street looking for a handout. And that was during the time when George Floyd was murdered. And we're having a conversation with the county our commission members. And at that time, our county manager stepped and said, listen, we're going to look at establishing this new office in our departments to make sure that our employees, number one, recognize internally we need to treat everyone with dignity and respect.
I like what he said just last there, treat everyone with respect. Again, the golden rule, and one thing I tell officers when I teach them, if you cannot respect the laws that protect you, then how you going to respect the laws that protect everybody else? So whenever you do something, you need to be sure that what you're doing is right and just and within the limits of the law. I drive that in their heads. I don't know how many times I say it throughout the whole thing. I also tell them that it's just important to find somebody, make sure you've proven somebody innocent than it is also to prove them guilty. And that's another thing I always bring to the table. And bringing to the table the community contacts made throughout the year, and I believe one of you mentioned about the Muslims being targeted. Yes, when I started working over the FBI in 2008, I was catching the end of that. It had actually kind of waned, but the local mosque leaders that I dealt with were always very open, very appreciative, would call me when something would happen. It's like, do we need to worry about this? When 9/11 anniversary came up, the end of Ramadan actually ended, and the Eid prayer, I think they did it in the park that year, and I was asked to come and hang out for security. And for the next 15 years, that's what I did. So I do love community. I love everybody here. You haven't given me a reason not to. So, I'm here to work.
Thank you. So, to all of you, thank you so much for participating in these problem-solving challenges. It became a quite interesting and important conversation, I think. And I'm going to turn the program back to Rachel, who has a final question for you.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. And thank you, candidates. Your concluding question, for which you will have 90 seconds. You won this year's election. You've served the citizens of Wilmington for at least one wildly successful term. It's now 2045. How is Wilmington different 20 years later as a result of your having served? And we're looking for specifics in terms of policies and initiatives and specific changes in the city. Who would like to begin?
I'll go ahead. Want to make sure that everybody adheres to any policy and procedures that we bring forth and the policies and procedures that are already there. I do realize sometimes that gets overlooked. I think we should have a strict adherence to making sure that everyone's treated with respect. The other thing too is I've kind of taken the stance where, when you get someone's application for whatever they work for in the city, just put a number there. And, base what you see off of nothing else but a number. And then you go forth with the interview and everything else. Some people interview great and test horribly. Some people test great and interview horribly. I want to be sure, and I want to enact policies that, we're all on the same page. Then the policy's already there. But, sticking to them and making sure that they are adhered to is probably the biggest thing I can say right now. In 2045, it's 20 years, I don't know, I'll be 72. I'm falling apart as it is, but I hope my impact is, that I made sure everybody was treated with respect, kindness, and, as a welcome member of this community, no matter what you are or who you are.
Thank you. Who's next?
20 years from now, I would want to see Wilmington more diverse. I'd like to see the diverse population wanting to stay here. I want to be able to see young people between the ages of 26 and 35 find Wilmington a place where they can also thrive and grow. I want to, in 20 years from now, I want to make sure that the skyline is paid for in full. No, and it will be. I'm just teasing. It definitely will be. But what I really would look for is I really want to look for a city that is inclusive, a city that would allow everyone to thrive and grow. And to do that, we have to strengthen the policies that we have. We have to make sure that we get the right people in the right places, as relates to city manager, police chief, members on the board. I think that those are some of the things that I would look forward to seeing happen in 20 years from now.
I'm over here smiling. I'll be like my dad, who just turned 80, reminded me and my brother and sister of all the great things he did as a county commissioner. So I'll be doing that to my kids and grandkids down the road, reminding them of, your papa did this, your papa did that, and here's where your papa was over here. I will say that I've already left my fingerprint on the county. When I got elected in 2008, I recognized the county had not done a strategic plan in almost 20 years. You had a board of commissioners that would tell the manager, bring me a budget with no tax increase, a penny tax increase, not understanding the unintended consequences of that decision. And I'm thinking, you're running a county government, you have no visioning document, no strategy on how you do that. How do you do that? I was president of the Board of Realtors in 2007. We had a strat planning workshop every year. How do you have a government with no strat plan? And so in 2011, when I chaired the board the first time, we hired a consultant from Dallas, Texas that came in, spent $35 grand. The community was in uproar that we spent $35,000 on a consultant to help us with a strategic plan. But that plan is now driving county government to this day forward. It's been readopted and readopted and readopted, but that strategic plan actually drives a budget, as opposed to someone saying, bring me a budget with no tax increase. Now you can actually tie your strategy into your budget and make sure those things work. And when I walk around the county buildings and I see those strategy bubbles and maps all around, I can say that was Johnathan Barfield that did that. And it's something that will outlive me. When I'm dead and gone, they'll still have that strategy in place.
I love this question. It's so great. 20 years from now, there are a couple of things that I know will be true. My daughter that I'm raising here will be 30 years old, and our community endowment will have invested over $1 billion in our county and our community. And so I think a lot about what can I do to make sure that when those two things are true, that that money that we've invested in our community through the endowment and through taxpayer money results in a city that my daughter can afford to live in. One of the things I'm really excited about is working on establishing a housing trust fund, which is going to take a long time, but I think 20 years might just do it. I think about the job opportunities that she's going to have and the skills that she's going to need to grow. I think about the environment that she's going to be surrounded by, and I want to make sure that she can still see longleaf pines and live oaks in the city and experience so much of our natural beauty. And finally, I would love to see a public transit network that serves our region and has eased traffic congestion for us. Those are all things that are going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, but I think they're worth working for, because that's not just the vision that I have for my 30-year-old daughter, but for all of her peers. And if she ever decides that she wants to run for city council when she's 30, I want it to be something that she's excited to do and proud to do. So, thanks.
Repeat the question, because I think you were asking about some specifics. Go ahead.
You won this year's election, and you've served the citizens of Wilmington in this wildly successful term. It's now 2045, 20 years later. What specific policies and or initiatives are in place now, and why is Wilmington better or different because of this term?
I think it comes down to making certain that you lead. And what I mean by that is there are cynics, and a cynic knows the cost of everything but the value of nothing. And then there are builders. Cynic is never remembered. I've never seen a monument built to a cynic. But the people that are builders, people that create things and build things and do things, are also quickly forgotten. But what they leave behind is felt by generations to come. When people said that we shouldn't be investing in downtown at the rate that we were, we said no, we need to invest in our community, in our downtown, and we did. When people said don't finish the Riverwalk, you don't have enough money to do it, we did it. When people said you can't build a convention center, we did it. When people said don't build a cross-city trail because it's in 2008 during the Great Recession and everybody was pulling back, it was the time of the Tea Party, we did it. And now we have one of the best trail systems to the point where everybody wants a trail, even in the county. When we said that we would build more parks, we did. Halliburton, Olson Park, and we want to do more than that. We did the soccer complex at the Encino Sports Complex. These are all things that we have all worked on together over many years. But remember, at the end of the day, it's what people feel, how this community reacts to it, how the community continues to grow and prosper because of those things. And one of the best things that we've ever done, and I'm very proud of it, when people said don't invest $2.5 million in Greenfield Lake Amphitheater, we said, hell no, we're going to do it, and it's become one of the great venues of not only this community, but this entire country. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I just have a couple of things to tell you about in closing. First of all, you all know that your admission to this event is paid for by your pledge to select a candidate to support either through your financial contribution to their campaign or else through your time contribution, volunteer work for their campaign. So please fulfill those pledges. Now I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I know you know because this is a really smart group. Election Day is November 4th. Early voting begins in a little more than 2 weeks, October 16th. New Hanover County will have 4 early voting locations. Now, on behalf of Indivisible Action Southeast North Carolina, I'd like to thank the candidates for participating in this very unusual type of candidate forum. I'd also like to thank Dan Brawley and the wonderful team here at Genco's Playhouse for making this possible. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to educate yourselves and for staying engaged in this democracy. Now you're all invited to join us in the back room for some refreshment and conversation. Thank you so much. Sam Pierce.
I'm back. So this is great. Thank you, everybody. I want to point out a few things. On this card that everybody got, there are 4 QR codes. In the top left, it is the sense of the room. I need you to go to that QR code and say, this is who I think I'm going to support. The reason we need that is because there are a lot of folks who have pledged but could not be here tonight. And we're going to give them the sense of the room so they can help, so what y'all experience, they can use that to maybe guide how they donate their time and their money. The top right corner is a link to the donation pages for all the candidates. So please use that. And do this as quickly as possible because these folks have done a lot of work and they've got a lot of work ahead of them. And so we want to step up really quickly. Now on the back side of this card is also very important. It is what we're doing over the next month. And to that point, on the October 3rd, that's Friday, that is the second unhoused meeting for the activists in this group to come back together and to talk about the plan that was mentioned, the strategic plan for the unhoused that's sitting on the table and is not being implemented. We want to help work to get that implemented. Second meeting is on Friday. Please join that. We've got a peace monitor training on October 4th, and that's for October 18th that's coming up. We have the creatives. A lot of creatives in this room are coming together on October 8th to talk about what could happen on October 18th, which is all king or no kings. On the 9th, there is the judges, gerrymanders, and the path to 2028. This is where we flip the Supreme Court. This is our strategic plan to do that. That's a meeting on the 9th. Please put that on your calendar if you're interested. On the October 17th, there is a gathering to make signs and be creative about what we're going to do on the 18th. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be right here. Put that on your calendar. And then the 18th is the No Kings. We all need to be turning out for the No Kings, and we need to get all our friends to turn out for the No Kings. On October 25th, there will be a key all-day training on what strategic action really is. This is going to be hardcore nuts and bolts of real action from the community. We invite you to join us on the 25th, and then, of course, November 4th is Election Day. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for your voice. Keep on using that voice. I always figure that though. I don't always figure that. I haven't stopped telling you her voice on the radio. You know, so you have some people have that. Yes. It's like